Okay, this is a reading help video for Chapter 2, Section 3, starting on page 44. Colonial Society. Big idea. Political, social, religious, and economic changes influence the way Americans think and act. Real-world civics. 6 U.S. presidents graduated from Harvard University, a remarkable record for a school founded before the Revolutionary War and designed to train ministers. Most early schools in America were established on the ideals of freedom of religion and freedom of education. In 1940, John F. Kennedy, one of those Harvard graduates, prepared to leave college to visit Britain, where his father was the U.S. ambassador. Kennedy later returned to the United States during the early rumblings of World War II and went on to be, in just over 2 decades, the 35th president of the United States. The economy. Main idea. The people of the colonies developed different ways of living. From the beginning, geography played a key role in how colonies developed. Colonists in the different regions had to adapt or adjust to the climate, soil, terrain, availability of rivers and harbors, natural resources, and other factors. New England. Most people in New England, including farmers, lived in towns. Farmers were small and located on the town's outskirts. Long winters and rocky, infertile soil made large-scale farming difficult. Other New Englanders worked in small businesses, milling grain, sewing clothes, or making furniture. Some worked as blacksmiths, shoemakers, or shopkeepers. Shipbuilding was an important industry. The region's forests provided wood for boats, and fishing and whaling also employed many New Englanders. The Puritan religion of early New England emphasized hard work, modest living, and personal virtues such as honesty, thriftiness, and obedience. These personal characteristics became known as the Puritan ethic. The Middle Colonies. In contrast to New England, the soil and climate in New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware were more suited to agriculture. Farmers in the Middle Colonies grew large amounts of wheat and other cash crops, which they sold in markets and overseas. This foreign trade spurred the growth of busy ports such as New York and Philadelphia. Industries such as sawmills, mines, and ironworks were developed to take advantage of the region's abundant natural resources. Industry and agriculture also improved the ideas and energy of immigrants from Germany, Holland, Sweden, and other European countries. The Southern Colonies. A warm climate, long growing season, and rich soil spurred the growth of large-scale agriculture in the Southern Colonies. In Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina, tobacco was the leading crop. Rice dominated in South Carolina and Georgia. Both crops were grown in the Tidewater, areas of flat, low plains near the seacoast of Virginia and North Carolina. The region's rivers made it easy to transport the harvested tobacco and rice, along with other products such as indigo and grain, to the coast for shipment to overseas markets. Charleston, South Carolina, became a leader in trade thanks to its excellent harbor. Tidewater crops required very large amounts of labor. Owners of plantations, the large estates of the southern colonies, came to depend on enslaved African workers. Smaller scale agriculture also existed, mainly in inland areas. Independent small farmers grew tobacco, corn, and other crops, and were less dependent on enslaved workers. Small farmers outnumbered the large plantation owners. The plantation owners, however, had greater wealth and more influence. They controlled the economic and political life of the region. Because large-scale agriculture was dominant in the South, the region did not develop much industry or commerce. It traded its many agricultural products for the manufactured goods it needed. An American identity. Main idea. The colonies continued to grow and developed their own culture and beliefs. In 1760, an English traveler in America, Andrew Burnaby, wrote that the colonies were as different from one another as fire and water. He felt that differences in character, manners, religions, and interests would prevent them from ever uniting, Burnaby noted. In short, such is the difference of characters, manners, religion, and interests of the different colonies that if they were left to themselves, there would soon be a civil war from one end of the continent to another. But in spite of the opinion of Burnaby and others, by the mid-1700s, colonists were already developing an American identity, religion. The desire for religious freedom was the reason many settlers first came to America, and religion remains a key element of the emerging American identity. In several colonies such as Massachusetts, religious leaders were often also the leaders of the government. Puritans passed laws that supported their beliefs about religion and society, and they had the power to expel those who did not share these beliefs. In other colonies, however, religion became separate from government, and toleration became the official policy. In colonies such as Pennsylvania and Rhode Island, toleration of other religions drew settlers of many different faiths. Religious tolerance gradually spread to other colonies during the 1700s. The Great Awakening. While some Americans turned away from religion in the 1700s, others renewed their faith. In the 1720s, a powerful religious revival known as the Great Awakening swept through the colonies. Fiery preachers stressed the importance of a personal religious experience and questioned the commitment and authority of some established religious leaders. Congregations were torn apart, and new religious groups such as Baptists and Methodists grew strong. In the South, enslaved workers found hope in Christianity, which strongly influenced the development of a new African American culture. Education. Religious feeling also led to the founding of America's first colleges and schools. Colleges such as Harvard in Massachusetts, Princeton in New Jersey, and William and Mary in Virginia were created for the purposes of training ministers. Religious groups also set up schools for children to make sure that people could read the Bible for themselves. In some colonies, taxes were levied to pay for public education. Not all colonial Americans enjoyed the benefits of education, however. Slave codes. Strict laws governing the treatment of enslaved people made it illegal to teach enslaved workers to read or write. Family life. The family formed the foundation of colonial society. Many were the formal heads of their families, which were often large. Wives looked after children and worked in household chores. On farms, men and women often worked together, assisted or helped by older children. In towns, women sometimes held jobs outside the home. They worked as maids, cooks, nurses, shopkeepers, or seamstresses. Families often arranged for their sons to work as apprentices or learning assistants to craft workers who taught them a trade. Married women had few rights, while widows and unmarried women could run businesses and own property. Women, however, could not vote, and men managed all community and church affairs. Ideas about government. In spite of the inequalities that existed in colonial America between whites and African Americans and between men and women, a new spirit was growing. The Enlightenment reinforced the idea of natural rights and individualism. The Great Awakening encouraged Christians to question traditional authority and to rely on their own insights about God. Together, these two powerful influences helped create a spirit of egalitarianism or equality. One element of this spirit of egalitarianism was the belief of many colonists that they possessed all the traditional rights of native English people. Americans viewed the growth of the power of Parliament in the 1700s with approval. They considered the British legislature the protector of the people's rights against royal power. At the same time, America's colonies were governed by officials appointed by the British Crown, a decision in which Americans had no say. British tax and tax policies protected British interests at the expense of American businesses. Government in the colonies. The English government had permitted new patterns of land ownership, new types of worship, and new kinds of government in its colonies. Once established, these practices became fixed principles. The colonists became used to self-government and gradually came to think of it as their right. By 1733, all 13 English colonies had been established, each with its own constitution. The Massachusetts Body of Liberties, adopted in 1641, protected individual rights and became part of colonial law. In 1683, the Pennsylvania Frame of Government was passed. This document, along with the 1701 Pennsylvania Charter of Privileges, established part of the basis for the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. By the time the colonies gained independence in 1776, each colony had its own representative government, one that had been operating for more than 100 years. Growing discontent. Yet by the mid-1700s, many Americans felt that they did not possess the rights of English citizens. They read Enlightenment writings in which the rights of the individual were proclaimed, yet many British policies toward the colonies did not follow these ideals. In particular, colonists accepted John Locke's idea that government derived its power from the consent of the people. As the century wore on, Americans looked for answers to the problem of a distant and unresponsive British government. To a growing number, one answer seemed to make the most sense: independence.